We'll call this evening's session to an order. Everybody's here, perfect. We do have regrets from Councillor Nanda. Do we have any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we have no consent nor confidential consent items, so we'll move to 5. But before we go forward with that, I believe that Mr. Van der Heijden has an update on regional numbers.
Thank you, Chair Grant. Just to update the Budget Committee on one number. So in the 3.92% increase that we had talked about earlier, that was based off of the region's estimated number. And they've now refined their estimate that's going forward, I believe, starting next week. So their number has increased from 3.6% to 5.99% based on the increased police budget, less some mitigation done by the region. And so for us here at the town, that means our overall is now sitting at 4.82% instead of the 3.92% we talked about previously.
Thank you. Any questions from the members of council? Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Thank you for that. Can you just, I don't expect you to have it right now, what the dollar amount was in terms of the transition of planning and development to the town? So we took on that work, we took on some CH work. Is it possible to understand what the magnitude of that was, and both in dollars and as a percentage of the tax levy?
Through you, Chair Grant. So just to clarify, you're looking for the legislative changes that have moved from the region to the lower tier?
Correct.
We can come back to you with that information.
Thanks very much.
Great, thank you very much. All right, moving on then to 5.1.
I just had a quick question.
Sorry. Oh, there we go. Yes, please
sorry,
go ahead.
through you, Councillor Grant. I just wondered whether John would be able to then update the report of how much it is per 100,000 of assessment based on now the town of Oakville, education, the region of Halton, what the new number would be. I don't expect it tonight, Jonathan, but if you could do that for us, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry for missing you. All right. And last call, not seeing anybody. Perfect. 5.1, Budget Committee request from September 26, 2004 meeting. Do we have any questions on the reports? The appendix seemed pretty straightforward. Taking a motion from Councillor Adams. Excellent. All in favor? Oh, you do have your hand up. I'm sorry, Councillor.
Through you, Chair Grant. Can I just ask for a clarification on a couple of the items? So in terms of the DC exemptions, can you just clarify how much of that so it says over the past 5 years, the town has funded 16.04 million in DC exemptions. So do we know what the annual number is? And I know it's going to vary based on developments, but do you know what the annual number is? And could you just point me to what that is for projected for 2025?
Through you, Chair Grant. So just to clarify, this is on Appendix H of 5.3, correct?
Yes, that's where I am.
So you're right, that isn't an annual number because that's just the total that's been accumulated over the past 5 years. These are exemptions that come in when there's an eligible development that doesn't have to pay DCs. So it'll depend on each development, and it'll depend on when they come in and what they're exempt under. So there is no annual number there, short of just dividing that by 5, but it really depends on which developments come in.
So maybe I'll ask the question a different way. What I'd like to understand is we all know that we have a portion of development that the tax levy has to cover because the DCs do not cover it, correct?
Through you, Chair Grant. We can only collect DCs for things that are eligible under the DC Act, and same for CBC and for Parkland. The exemptions that we have had and the new ones that have been added really represent lost revenue to the town, and then we have to make decisions accordingly about the timing and nature of our projects. So it's not as simple as saying there's a budgeted line item for those items. It's more about when and how we collect the revenue.
So we have to build something. We know we need it. We know that a portion of it is growth-related, the rest is existing benefit. What I'm looking to understand is that dollar amount, or, what are the dollar or percentage that typically we have to put on the levy for the fact that the DCs are not covering the service that we wish, the facility or the needed or required service.
Through you, Chair Grant. So when we use the phrase benefit to existing, that's based off of the service levels that we have and the work that we're doing. So in some projects, our benefit to existing can be quite high that the town has to fund. In other projects that are more growth driven, it can be quite low. It does depend on each individual project and the nature of the work being done. So I don't think I'm really answering your question, but that's how the calculation for benefit to existing versus growth funding works.
So when I look on page 22, which is appendix, I'm still at appendix I, it says within the growth-related projects, 14.4 million in funding from town reserves and reserve funds is required for financing the portion of certain projects that include benefits to existing residents. So I guess my direct question is 14.4 million normal? And as a percentage of the tax levy, do we have any idea?
So through you, Chair Grant, it's hard to answer the question of whether it's normal. I think it would depend on each project. So when we have a project that does improve services for existing residents, that is the portion that we have to fund from our own sources. And so if you think of a project where you're also replacing something in addition to making it bigger or better to accommodate growth, the portion that is an improvement for existing, that would be what our residents have to pay through our infrastructure component of the budget. But that will depend on each project that comes up. Some projects are very growth dependent and some have only a small component of growth.
Okay. Nancy?
Sorry, just to add to that, it really depends on the capital program for the year. So it will vary depending on the projects coming forward. So for instance, with the new library project downtown, it's replacing an existing library. It's going to be mostly on the tax levy. Other years where most of the projects are really fully driven by growth, you'll see less. So it's not, there is always an amount every year that's funded through the tax levy, but it does vary depending on the capital program and the types of projects that are coming forward in that particular year.
So what I'm trying to get at, because residents have asked, is how can we control or constrain the impact on the tax levy of some of these projects? So what I'm hearing you say is, look at the capital forecast, determine if those are things we really need or want. That would be the only way we could really reduce the impact. Is that the simple answer?
Through you, Chair Grant. Yes, that would be the simple answer.
Okay, thank you. I had another question, but it is not related to the appendix. Can I ask that, Chair Grant?
Sure. Actually, I didn't want to interrupt your train of thought. I think you've jumped us down to 5.3 with your appendices.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did.
No problem. We'll try and actually
I'll
cover
let you go back.
what we can. If you have one question related to the topic, though, certainly, go ahead.
No, I'll wait.
Okay. Next up is Councilor Elgar.
Sorry, to you, Chair Grant, I actually, mine was, I thought we had jumped at 5.3, therefore, I'll put my hand down until we get to 5.3, because my question is related to appendices from 5.3 also. Thank you.
Very good. Councilor Shi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about Appendix K. So they're talking about North Oakville driveway design review and the North Oakville parking management communication plan. So I just want to know when we expected to have this report.
Through you, Chair Grant.
Perfect. Gabe is on the line there to answer that question.
Sorry to interrupt, through the chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor. That is something that we're going to be working on starting early in the new year. We anticipate getting that wrapped up by the end of 2025.
Okay, so driveway design is just in that report for management communication plan. It's the same one. Is it a separated research or is two report or one report?
Through the chair, it does remain to be seen whether it'll be two separate reports or one single one. They do absolutely inform each other. There's no question. So we'll certainly take a look at that as we work through 2025.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor McNeice.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Grant. So on 5.1, Appendix H, the Bronte parking study. So appreciate the overview of what's happening and what's coming. What I was hoping to get was a bit of a comparison to Burlington's downtown parking plan that they're working on now. So that sort of includes forecasts of future growth and sort of expectations of demand so that we can start getting ahead of it or looking for floors in future parking developments in areas where we don't own land. So I see a note in here that staff will review other municipal parking studies such as Burlington downtown, determine if there's any elements. Will we get that back within the budget process, just sort of a comparison between the two and if there's any opportunities for us?
Through Chair Grant, the Bronte parking supply study is planned at right now per the memo begin in 2027. So at that time, when we approach the budget for the additional money to do the study, we will compare to ensure that we are doing the similar scope of work to Burlington. We already touched base with Burlington staff to find out what their scope is and the details, so we are in the process of getting that as well. We're not reporting back though, specifically just to compare it with Burlington. Through each of these parking studies, we understand a desire from council to have a similar review for forecasting opportunities for the future, identifying parking opportunities. So we will make sure that's aligned.
And do we know the budget that's required in 2027 for the parking
Yes.
study?
So according to Memo H, it's the future budget requested will be approximately $250,000 to take a look at the Bronte parking supply study.
And that, in your mind, that's similar in scope to Burlington's downtown?
It should be appropriately aligned. Yes,
Okay.
it will be.
So essentially, if we were to back that up, it's $250,000 in this year's budget or next year's budget, or?
Yes, if there's desire to move the budget forward ahead of the 2027 plan, then of course we will ensure that is aligned to similar to Burlington's.
Okay, and is there, do you, and you may not have the answer right now, but is there any economy of scale if, I know downtown has some concerns and similar characteristics with the BIA as well as Kerr, is there any, and I know there's separate reports on those, is there an economy of scale if we're doing 2 or 3 at once, or not really?
Through Council Grant, I think process-wise, it's a little easier in terms of purchasing. However, I don't think from economy skills will be any cheaper if we try to do, because it's complete different characteristics. We still have to look at utilization of 2 separate places. Downtown has a different need than Bronte, so I think it's still complete independent studies with downtown coming first in the plans and Bronte being next.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. And Councillor Haslett-Thiel.
Sorry, I did have one on that part of the addendums. My question is around the side streets for downtown. So I read the report, thank you for the detail. Some of our side streets downtown have abysmal sidewalks. And what I'm concerned about is it says there's nothing in the 10-year forecast to address those, and sort of they're addressed on a one-off kind of need. We're not going to see development on those side streets, which it would allow us to take advantage of that, which I appreciate is the more efficient approach to it. But you know, you just have to walk by the TD branch and see what the sidewalk. If you walk on Dunn, be careful, because the sidewalk is not in great shape. So I wasn't asking even from an aesthetic perspective. I'm concerned that the streets are not, side streets are not in good condition. So what advice do you have for me and the downtown BIA and all those millions of visitors to downtown in terms of how we either get something in the forecast to not just patch the sidewalks, but actually do what's necessary to make them appropriate?
We definitely hear you in terms of the current the state of these sidewalks are less desirable. Between all the streetscape studies, I think through my commission presentation, we indicated we did put in some priorities between the other areas. Kerr has some dollars in the 10 years, and Bronte Lakeshore has some dollars in the 10 years. We certainly understand your concern about not having any dollars for the side street yet. I think it's per Jonathan's previous points. We certainly have all sorts of requirements and needs and wants, and there are certain things that we just need to prioritize. I'm to council's discretion if the side street or downtown come ahead of some other capital projects, but it would need to we need to prioritize between the other streetscapes improvements in the overall capital, I'll say, pressures that we're facing. So that was the main reason, Councillor, that the side streets are now below the Kerr and the Bronte in terms of priority. So first we get the lake shores done, and then we go into all the side streets to prioritize for the next 10 years.
So I in no way want to pull funds from Kerr and Bronte, and I totally support their streetscape and have for a while. I guess is there at least an assessment being done of those side streets and the cost of doing some of the work that could be provided to us for consideration?
Definitely, through you, Councillor Chair Grant. We will look at the assessments through the TMP. We actually assess all the sidewalks in terms of gaps and repairs. And through our asset management plan, we'll go back to look at the downtown side streets and see if there's any repairs we could make. We may not be able to make a very large structural change, making it much wider, unless we do the complete streetscape. But we could certainly look at the condition of the sidewalks and go back and look through our asset management plans to improve that through our sidewalk improvement projects.
I'd accept the sidewalk conditions being looked at. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Chisholm.
Through you, the chair, I'm just echoing Councillor Hazathiel's comments with respect to side streets, and I'm glad she indicated Bronte and Kerr Street, and we do have our challenges. The biggest challenge with side streets is accessibility for our wheelchairs and so forth. It's pretty rough. So under those circumstances, prioritizing that something work to be done on that. I don't go back to the idea that we're talking about aesthetics. We're talking about the need for our side street to be accessible to the main street too. So I just leave it as that. So consideration when you're looking at your work plans to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we've exhausted all the questions for 5.1. We've got a motion from Councillor Adams to carry or to receive all this. All in favor? Excellent, that was moved. Let's move on to the main event, at least to my mind. We're going to hear from delegations. And first up today, we've got Michelle McCullum from Future Energy Oakville. Now, we've heard from you recently. I'm sure you've got new stuff for us to understand.
I do, Chair Grant. A very good evening. It's lovely to be here. I'm not quite Taylor Swift and not as sparkly, but I hope we'll get through this and maybe with a little entertainment, hopefully. Anyway, lovely to see you all. Michelle McCollum, I'm Chair of Future Energy Oakville, and I'm here tonight to say a huge thank you for all the support that you've given us so far, and also to request some further support as we go forward. And I am delighted to be joined this evening by a number of friends from the FEO board. So we have Mohammed, Fabiana, and Karina are here today as well. Background and by way of reminder, FEO is a not-for-profit organisation created by the Community Energy Strategy, and our goals are to enhance energy efficiency, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and return a significant amount of dollars back into the economy by accumulating cost savings. I'm just going to, because you've heard from me very recently, I'll get through this very quickly to respect time. So a reminder of all of the partners, the key partners with the town of Oakville and our core collaborators, communities of practice and other not-for-profits. We have had a number of successes this year, including our fundraising, our development plan, launch of a number of podcasts and partnering a number of events, some successful media posts along with our regular board meetings and strategy sessions. I did share with you last month when I was here that we've been trying to recruit an executive director, and we have been really struggling with that recruit despite having a number of great applicants, with salary and lack of ongoing funding being consistent issues with us being able to secure a full-time person. We did create a development plan to help with our fundraising efforts, which did create some really tangible outcomes, again, which I shared with you last month. Just a reminder of our opportunities and challenges. Here in Oakville, we are very passionate about sustainability and very aligned in the need for urgent action towards energy transformations. Our industry stakeholders do believe in our mission, but again, we've been struggling from a fundraising perspective, with companies really being able to see a return on investment from them investing with us at the moment. And the major challenge with being able to recruit an executive director. So from a financial position, I did share with you in our recent update that we're doing okay at the moment, but the only reason for that is because we don't have any paid staff on board. So the salary gapping means our finances look a lot better than they actually are. But as we go forward, unless we attract or receive significantly more funding than we currently have in place, we're simply not going to be able to make this organisation work or continue beyond the end of next year. We need more stability. We need to be able to hire an executive director who will then in turn need resources to be able to take forward our mandate and mission to move forward the goals of the energy strategy. A reminder and our gratitude for the money that the town has given us so far, but we need that financial stability so we can continue moving forward. Okay, so what are we asking for? So ideally, we would like to ask council for $450,000 for each year over the next 3 years to be able to give us some kind of consistency with our budget. This would really set us up for success to be able to move forward with building the programs we need to build and supporting the initiatives we need to support and getting going with our fundraising and development plan, moving forward with things like grant applications, getting our charitable status in place, and creating a groundswell of movement in the community through events, podcasts, and other thought leadership activities. We want to play to win rather than play not to lose. Recognizing that that's a significant amount of money, and we know that we just heard this evening on the pressures of the town's budget. We did also want to come up with a second option and really had a look at these numbers. It means that we wouldn't quite have the same pace, but an alternative is to give us $300,000. It would still allow us to move forward with hiring an executive director. And along with another employee. Again, we need this consistency of funding for more than a year. But I would suggest that we would want to discuss with you talking about benchmarks and key performance indicators. Ultimately, our goal is we want to reduce the funding that is needed from the town, as we know these are really important tax dollars. So in terms of our next steps, should be something that you would agree to commit to, we would want to work with the town to strengthen the agreement between the town of Oakville and FEO, so that it includes metrics and deliverables and is completely in line with town priorities and with community priorities. It would allow us to take a leadership role, and I think this is really important with the updated community energy strategy. We can hire the executive director, which is really absolutely essential, and continue to explore partnership opportunities. And why is this also important? Well, in refreshing the community energy strategy, we know that we really need to increase our actions towards addressing climate change as a community. We need urgency, but we also need agency. And we need to connect the private sector and the public sector with community, because there are so many opportunities, and that's exactly what we've been set up to do. So we don't want to undo the great work that's been done so far. I would end by saying to you that I believe in FEO, I believe in this organization. You know, we're volunteers, all of us here tonight, and we have committed and we're willing to commit our time to achieving our goals, but we simply can't do it without your support. We've had a rough go over the past few years. We haven't delivered exactly what we've wanted to deliver to you, but your commitment and belief in us would give us the opportunity to have a go at this and make it successful this time for the town, but most of all for our amazing community here in Oakville. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much to all of you for your time this evening and for your consideration. It's truly appreciated.
Okay, hold on, we'll just see. Any questions for our speaker? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have another speaker, a late breaking guest, Mr. Sevion.
Good evening. I'd just like to bring up certain points in regards to both the operating budget as well as the capital budget. And first, before I get into that, I just want to, Appendix A has the various appendices in regards to questions which were posed by Council and the Mayor, and relating specifically to Appendix E, which is enforcement services after hours. I was just trying to get a better understanding. I know a lot of information was provided by staff, but in regards to the number, please document here, the number of after-hour calls, it indicated statutory weekend after hours, and a grand total for the year was 5,503. What I want to understand is which of those requests for service were answered promptly. Like, for instance, I know, noise complaints or cars parking, especially after hours or even in the weekend, whether or not it's being serviced by the officers for the town. Prior knowledge, I'm not too certain in regards to that. So I just want more information with respect to that, because potential exists for the allocation of staff within that area to be more on the weekend or after hour or statutory holidays. So I'm not too sure about what percentage of the total staff is allocated towards these 5,503 requests or calls submitted for enforcement. That's an information that's, I would hope staff can provide, not at this time because they don't have that right at their fingertips. So I just want to continue in regards to the ridership, Oakville Transit. I know the Oakville 5-year business plan for transit was given to council, was presented, and I believe council endorsed the plan based on staff recommendation. But there's I wonder if you can look at my overhead here. Thank you. Is that possible? Well, if not,
We'll see if we can get somebody on that.
okay. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you very much. Now, as we try to get this focus in a little bit better, with the plan for 2025, with a population of 247,520, if nothing was done, it showed that revenue for passengers would be approximately 3 million. However, if based on staff recommendation, which was endorsed, it indicated that it would increase to approximately 4 million. I'm just wondering how that number came about, because based on the staffing for 2025, there's only 1.5 which will be allocated in 2025 for new positions. I thought you would require drivers to bump up that amount to 4 million. New drivers, obviously, for new routes. So that's one of my questions. How is that possible that you increased by almost $1 million in 2025 where there's no additional staff for providing transit on the buses for the new routes? And then I wanted just to turn to the capital project side of the number of vehicles. First, I'll just go over something which I noticed. It's on page 522 of the capital budget. It indicated the supervisor vehicle expansion for one vehicle is 80,000. That's quite expensive. I'm just wondering, will all 80,000 be spent? I wouldn't spend that much money for a vehicle because of my tight budget, which I am on since I'm retired. I would hope the town wouldn't spend 80,000 with respect to that as well for a vehicle for a supervisor. Continuing on the capital budget side, with respect to traditional bus replacement programs, indicated for 2025, there's 14 million which will be allocated as per the capital budget. I understand that buses cannot be replaced in the particular area, even though we may have 14 million to spend. It most likely will be put into service until 2026. Now, I'm just wondering, why is it that towns wanted conventional transit bus replacement? Why not consider more electrical vehicles, which is another budget capital item? The direction is for energy efficient as well as zero emissions. So why not, rather than for conventional transit, why not electrical budget? Similarly, there's also another $5 million for expansion of the conventional budget for 2025. If I see that correctly, my eyesight's not as good as you. Pardon me, it's 6 million. So the same sort of logic. If we are moving towards electric vehicles and electric transit, why invest in conventional? So that's a topic that I would hope that staff would address. And now, in regards to another item, not transit related, but with respect to facilities, recreational facilities, I noticed that part of the presentation, but the plan by Parks and Rec and Oakville Public Library, there proposed will be 2 twin pads, one in North Oakville and one will be in South Oakville as per item 4 and item 7. My only question is, arenas specifically, number of participants are dropping throughout the years, and I don't see the need for twin pads. I know the one on South Oakville was considering closing down 2 single pad and to get a twin pad. But as population grows, the aging of the population, the individuals who are joining the town, and the decrease in number of individuals participating in ice hockey is declining through the years. The need for such capital project relating to arenas, I don't see it would be justified. Just an additional item which I noticed on number 8, which is all the way up here. Yes, it's in regards to neighborhood community center library. I hope whatever site the town will select for this will be lower, because I don't want to see the town providing services for the people in Milton. I'm sorry, but Milton has a budget and they should spend it accordingly. And just wanted to say that because based on projections, for arenas, it shows that the town has sufficient arenas all the way up until basically 2032. So I don't see the need in order to allocate to arenas. Simple as that. Now, another area I want to just highlight is in regards to fire services. As you are aware, the annual call volume of incidents, which is not necessarily fire, for 2021 is 6,965. However, the majority of these items, as you can see, do not relate to fire. Here it's fire. Property fire is only like 3%, 2%. So that's a very low amount. I know fire department provides excellent service to the town residents. The only question I have is in regards to an old item which has been knocked around for many years in regards to the benefits of home sprinklers. That makes so much more sense. It reduces the liability of damage to property. It's environmentally better in the sense that it uses less water, as well as the runoff is substantially less. And the risk to firefighters with sprinkler system is dramatically lower. So my question becomes, is the town ever going to consider having a mandatory requirement for sprinklers within new home developments? It's logical. The price is relatively low for each house. It'll save hundreds, if not millions of dollars in fire services costs, as well as protect the residents, as well as protect the firefighters who service this. I see I'm out of time.
You are out of time.
So I thank you very much, Councillor Grant. I have a few more items, but
And I was about
such
to
is
say,
life.
you've obviously given a great deal of thought to your questions. It would be irresponsible for me to have staff respond right now, but I believe they've taken note of all of your questions and will be able to provide a response if you give them your email address.
Sure, I will.
And this
Thank
is
you.
probably a good time to advertise budget@oakville.ca. Any questions you have, any questions people at home have, they can certainly provide it to us that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You do have a question though from Councillor Adams.
Oh, sure.
Thanks very much for the delegation. I think you may have pointed at a few things that are not directly within the budget. Your comments about the sprinklers is,
Correct.
I think, a building code type of issue. I think our staff are nodding their heads at that, so it kind of falls outside of the budget world.
I just want to say it is within the budget if you think logically, because we're spending millions on new fire stations, operating budget for fire services. That can be reduced in the future based on for your capital budget, because if you do sprinklers, that's a solution.
So I urge you to go speak to your member of provincial parliament, because that's where the building code sits on that kind of thing. I appreciate that the town can ask, but we don't control that directly.
Understand.
So you also brought forward some things about the recreation facilities master planning process, which really has to do with our choice about what service level we want and when. The twin padding issue is one around the timing and provision of that. And so those are projects that are way off in the future, those particular ones, as opposed to...
The future's going to approach us very fast.
Anyway, several years away, and I appreciate they need to be considered at the right time. Your transit ridership questions, I'm not sure if I was able to properly see your table that you had.
Right.
And so I think our transit staff are in the best position to answer that technical question about the assumptions there. So, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. Now, looking around the room, is there any further presentations today? Anybody who has a comment? All right, we'll confine this to table. And I'll take a motion from the mayor that we will receive presentations from the delegations. Thank you. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Now, 5.3, which is further comments or further appendices from the October 22nd and October 24th meetings. I know that there is a list already. I'm going to start with Councillor Haslett-Thiel, seeing how we'd stopped there last time. Go, okay, all right. We'll start with Councillor Elgar then.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Grant. With regard back to Appendix I, Jonathan mentioned the town has to fund, and that was the other sources. Jonathan, would it be fair to say it's not the town, it's the taxpayers that are funding the others, are the other sources, the 14.4 million of the development charges that can't be covered by the developers?
Through you, Chair Grant. Looking at the 14.4 million in that chart, a large portion, if not all of those items, are for the town share of the cost for the benefit to existing residents. And you are correct, that would be on the taxpayer. When we say town, it is on funds generated through taxes that go into our infrastructure renewal reserves.
Okay, I appreciate that. Jonathan, and when it comes to, like, we've got some different pockets of money, like we've got the town reserves, reserve funds, we've got the rate stabilization fund, we've got a contingency fund. Do we know exactly what the numbers are that are in the fund that have come from basically the taxpayers of Oakville? Is there anywhere in the budget book I can see that number of all those different accounts?
Through you, Chair Grant, just to make sure I understand the question, Councillor Elgar, you're referring to the balances in our various reserve funds, correct?
Correct, yes.
Yes.
There's quite a few.
Correct.
And
So
like the tax reserve fund is an excellent one. I'm trying to figure out right, the contingency fund. What is in the contingency fund? How much is there? And what is it delegated to be used for and by whom? Like what is it?
through you, Chair Grant. So to answer the first part of your question, at one of our first budget committee meetings, and I'm forgetting the date, we do produce a reserve report that outlines all of the reserve balances that we have here at the town. And I think that would probably be the best spot to look for a lot of information, not only about the balances in the reserves, but what they're for.
Okay. Can you clue me into where I could find that? Like exactly where? I'm sorry. Like I'm thinking specifically. Well, the town reserve to let people see we're very responsible in what we're trying to do. But I'm just trying to make sure that if the taxpayer asks us, I'm getting weird calls. I don't know. This year seems to be different than other years. But what are we doing with their money? And I just want to be able to show that we are acting responsibly.
Through you, Chair Grant. So ensuring that our reserve balances are at the right levels is something that we take seriously here at the town as well. The quickest answer to give to residents would be to look at page 320 of our budget book. That's where we have one chart that shows those projected balances. And then the reserve report that we prepare as part of our budget work, that provides a lot more information on each reserve. And I'd be happy to provide the link to that to all members of council after tonight's meeting, if that's of help to you.
That would be most helpful. I'd appreciate it. And is there something saying what we can use it for? Specifically, Jonathan, reserve contingency fund. What can it be used for, and what can't it be used for?
So through you, Chair Grant, I believe there's an appendix on that reserve report that lists all of our reserves and a very brief description of exactly what they can be used for. Some are very specific and some are much more general in nature.
Well, I thank you, and I look forward to getting the details on that. And I'd like to thank staff for the details they are able to provide. It's not simple, but I think what we've done, other than when I learned tonight, it looks like our budget's going up a little more than what I think our taxpayers are going to want, based on not just, what has happened at the region too. So I think we could be in for a little bit of a ride going forward based on what you just presented tonight. So, Jonathan, thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Chisholm.
Just a couple of quick clarifications. The Appendix C with respect to road resurfacing, can, through staff, through the chair to staff, pavement quality index, we're at a 70. What does that mean, those numbers? I don't have understanding what that means. Help me understand what that means. I know we're meeting it or exceeding it, but I don't know what those numbers relate to with the pavement quality index.
Through you, Councillor Grant. The pavement quality index is a measurement that we do through a field assessment. It's kind of a technical measurement of assessing all of the roads. It's a pavement quality index. The higher the number, the better. So we've set a target of trying to maintain overall condition of the town roads at a level of 70. So if we are exceeding that across the town, then we are doing better than that. And further to that, we set a target for the arterial roads at a minimum of 65 and the local roads at 55, and try to make sure we don't fall below having 10% of our network below those standards, if that helps.
Yeah, okay, let's just a little bit more detail. What I'm trying to understand because I've seen in our ward, I've seen resurfacing done on roadways that don't need resurfacing. That seems to be happening in a couple of areas, and I've had residents calling and say, "Why are you resurfacing? There's nothing wrong with this roadway." So the 70, is it boring happen, thickness, potholes? What that 70? What is that?
Yeah, through you, we'll definitely send you some pictures. So there is a
Scammer, you are so bad.
Kathy, you're on. You off, Kat? Sorry, Kathy's. I think you're talking about the dog. Her dog.
Okay. Sorry, I thought I said something wrong.
I think you're safe. I think we're all safe.
Okay. Let me start again. Sorry. Through you, Councillor Grant. We'll definitely provide some information related to all the grades. As I call it, 70%, 60%, 50%. So if you look at, I'll make some comparison. Oakville generally have very good road quality. So it's the cracks that you see. Sometimes you'll see these lines that we seal with the different lines, and then there's potholes. So if you the best way is on the news, sometimes you'll hear about Toronto. Their pavement quality index is around 50 and below. If not, some roads are like 40 and 30. So you will get used to driving through uneven roads, potholes, bumps, cracks, because depending on the asset condition. So what the council here picked the 70%. Now, as you mentioned, some of the roads, the resident may say, well, this looked perfectly fine. We didn't have to rehabilitate it or resurface it. Then if that's the overall sentiment, if we start lowering our overall grade, I'll say the 70%, then you'll start to feel some roads will look a little bit worn or have a little bit more cracks, or it might have a pothole here and there. So it's a matter of preference, and certainly that's the level that we set. And as a management department, we do regular condition audits of all our roads over X amount of years, and then we calculate it, and then we pick the roads that's worst on the list. So we could provide you with pictures of each grades, because there's the industry standard in terms of how they're graded.
Okay, so if I'm looking right now as a layperson looking for a fourth line to Dorval on Spears Road, what would you classify Spears Road, that section of the roadway under the pavement quality index?
You're definitely testing me, Councilor Chisholm. We have a list of every road in the town, and they're great. So we could definitely provide that back to you for that segment.
Okay, that's my next question. On page 1127 of the of Appendix C, Spears Road widening and AT fourth line to Dorval. So that's more than resurfacing. Is that a total structure of curbing, left-hand lanes? Because I know that you've been moving poles back and widening. So is that part of the $1.1 million?
Yeah. Through you, Councillor Grant, we are going to be reconstructing that whole section of Spears Road, and because we're reconstructing it, it will have brand new surface course asphalt when we're done, which means we don't need to resurface it. The pavement condition would warrant resurfacing if we weren't going to reconstruct it, so we are incorporating that amount in the budget and accounting for the fact that we will be doing that in our overall calculation of what the pavement quality index is and will be on that average.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Very good. And Councillor Hassett-Thiel.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Grant. I just wanted to make sure I understood the difference between a reserve fund and contingency. So I understand the reserves quite, it's there. It's very clear what we hold them for and why. But I understand we also have a contingency fund. I'm not sure where that's documented in the budget book, and I just wanted to understand, how do we determine what can come from, how that money is either allocated for use?
Through you, Chair Grant. So you're right. There's a difference between our the contingency line we have in our budget and our regular reserves. So included in the corporate expenses and revenues, we do have a contingency line, and we use that for a whole variety of things that come up of the corporate nature. So it can be anything from HR-related matters that come up during the year to extra legal bills, to work that may be asked from council during the year. I've actually taken a look at it recently in the past 10 years, and there's a variety of costs that go through there. And it's because throughout the course of the year, random things do come up that we have not budgeted for or not counted on. I think if I go back really far, there was some work on the hospital lands that was not budgeted for that needed to be done. So that is something that we have a line in our budget to allow for those items.
So thank you for that explanation. So how does it differ from tax stabilization?
Through you, Chair Grant. So the tax stabilization is a set reserve, and that is an amount of, or that is a balance that we have for when larger items come up. I think that some of the items we use contingency for tends to be of the smaller nature. We do have a financial control policy that dictates how much different levels in this organization can approve expenditures for. And anything over, I think it's 350,000, has to come to council. So we tend to use that for the bigger ones because that's what our policy says. But when we have ones that are smaller amounts that add up or are non-discretionary or things of that nature, that's what we would use it for.
So thank you for giving us that explanation. My other question is around parkland, and I'm back to reserve funds. So we have we projected the year end at 92.1 million, and you're showing a capital commitment of 59.9. Can you just refresh my memory? What parks are being developed with that 59.9? Because the balance is showing in 2025 at 37.8, and that won't even buy me 1 hectare of land in Midtown.
Through you, Chair Grant. So the Parkland Reserve Fund is used primarily to purchase land for parks. And I know that there are a number of items that we have our eye on, if I can say, as to what those would be for. I think Director Mark would probably be able to give a better answer than I can about that. But that is what Parkland Reserve Funds are for. And as you know, with land purchases, they're not small and they come up very irregularly.
So I guess what I'm looking for then is some assistance on, in that 59.9, where would I find the list of how that money has now been allocated? And then what advice would you have for us in terms of allocating money, additional money for parkland, knowing that the parkland dedication bylaw will not suffice what we need in some of our strategic growth nodes?
Through you, Chair Grant, two very different questions. The first one's a lot easier to answer. We can get you a list of what's on there. In terms of advice on how to do that, I would need to take that back and think about it before I answer that on the spot right now.
So I'm perfectly great to get an answer later in November before we make a decision on the budget. And then in terms of the 59.9, what page or where would I find what's been allocated?
Oh, sorry, through you, Chair Grant, just to clarify the question. So you're wondering on what makes up that 59.9?
Yes.
I don't think we have those set ones in the budget book. I think we can get that for you. That's what I offered to bring back.
Okay, but are those council-approved parkland acquisitions?
Yeah. Go over it, Nancy.
Sorry, through you, Chair Grant. Yes, those would have been approved. They're either through the budget documents or through prior reports. It's committed until you spend it. So we can bring you back the list of exactly what makes up that 59 million.
Okay, thanks very much for that. I appreciate it. And my last question is just around, I had asked a question offline about the total dollars spent on climate change or environmental sustainability. And I think you were going to try and create a chart. Will we see that at the next budget meeting?
Through you, Chair Grant. So in the budget book, I don't have the actual chart in front of me. There is one that has the 4 key pillars of council strat plan and how much we're spending and investing in each of those key pillars. And it breaks out how much for environmental sustainability for believe both operating and capital. And then the details would be throughout the budget book because there are different projects that touch on different pillars throughout the different programs. And there are different programs go into different buckets as well. So we can certainly pull that information and send it out to members of committee.
I think it would really complement the work that Director Clark gave us around what we've invested in and the efforts we've done in environmental. And we have a request for 400 or 300,000 a year. So I'd like to understand how that all comes together. So thanks for your patience with my questions.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? All right, I'm looking for a motion to receive the responses from the Budget Committee. That's from Councillor Knoll. All in favor? That passes. And that brings us to the very end of the evening. So thank you very much, everybody. We're adjourned.